I was running on fumes after a 30-hour call, the kind of exhaustion that made my thoughts blur at the edges. But even then, I couldn't stop thinking about Emily. It was the anniversary of the day we first met, one of those small, personal milestones that we'd always celebrated. Emily also works in the same hospital as a nurse. In face, she was the only reason I wanted to stay here instead of going back to my hometown. I decided to surprise her by coming home early, even though all I really wanted to do was crawl into bed and sleep for a week. On my way home, I picked up a bouquet of her favorite flowers, sunflowers, bright and cheerful, just like her. I also grabbed a box of her favorite chocolate mousse cake from the bakery down the street. I was tired, sure, but the thought of seeing her smile, of spending a quiet evening together, kept me going. When I walked through the door, I was still wearing my scrubs. I called out, "Emily? I'm home early." There was no answer. I figured she might be in the bedroom, so I headed down the hallway, a little bounce in my step despite the fatigue. But as I pushed open the door, everything inside me froze. It was as if time itself had frozen in that instant, and the air was sucked out of the room. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. There she was, Emily, my wife, the woman I had loved and trusted, tangled up in our bed with a man I had never seen before. They both looked up, their eyes wide with shock, as if I was the intruder in my own home. The man scrambled to cover himself, his face a mixture of guilt and panic. Emily's expression, however, was what cut me the deepest. It wasn't just fear or shame. It was a cold realization that the facade she had carefully maintained was crumbling. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't think. My mind just went blank, trying to process what I was seeing. The flowers slipped out of my hand, and I just stood there, staring. "Alex," Emily started, as if she's afraid to scare me. "It's not what you think." But it was exactly what I thought. I felt a rush of emotions: betrayal, confusion, anger, sadness. But I was too exhausted to process any of it. My heart was pounding, my chest felt tight, and all I could manage was a quiet, "Why?" The guy, looking just as panicked as Emily, mumbled something about leaving, but I wasn't listening. I couldn't even look at him. My eyes were locked on Emily, searching her face for something, anything that made sense. But all I saw was guilt and, oddly, some calmness. "I'm sorry," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "Alex, I'm so sorry." The guy, fumbling awkwardly, looked just as panicked as Emily. His hands shook as he quickly grabbed his underwear and scrambled to gather his clothes from the floor. In his frantic haste, he pulled on his pants only to discover that Emily's underwear was tangled up inside them. He blushed furiously as he fished it out, tossing it aside, and ran past me and left. I just want to run away as well, but Emily's voice stopped me. "Alex," she called out, her tone oddly calm. "Now I don't have to feel this guilt anymore. Every day, it's been eating me alive, knowing I was lying to you, betraying you. But now it's out in the open. I don't have to pretend anymore." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Couldn't take it. I turned around and walked out, leaving the flowers on the floor, the cake on the kitchen counter. I didn't even know where I was going. My body was on autopilot, driving back to the hospital, the only place that made sense to me anymore. When I got there, it was still dark outside, the parking lot mostly empty. I parked my car and just sat there, staring at nothing. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. I didn't want to see anyone, didn't want to talk. Saturday at some point, I must have started crying, though I didn't even realize it until I felt the tears on my face. I felt like everything had fallen apart in the span of a few minutes, and I didn't know how to put it back together. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Couldn't take it. I turned around and walked out, leaving the flowers on the floor and the cake on the kitchen counter. My mind was a blur, and I didn't even know where I was going. My body was on autopilot, driving back to the hospital, the only place that made any sense to me anymore. When I got there, it was still dark outside, the parking lot mostly empty. I parked my car and just sat there, staring into the void. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. I didn't want to see anyone, didn't want to talk. Saturday time passed in a haze. At some point, I must have started crying, though I didn't even realize it until I felt the tears on my face. It was like everything had fallen apart in the span of a few minutes, and I had no idea how to put it back together. Alex, the voice startled me. I looked up to see Sam, one of my colleagues, standing by my car. He must have noticed I wasn't acting like myself and came out to check on me. He had that concerned look on his face, but there was something else there too, an odd, almost imperceptible smile, as if he was trying to hide something but couldn't quite manage it. "You okay, man?" Sam asked softly, his voice full of genuine concern. I tried to say something, but the words got stuck in my throat. I shook my head, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. Sam didn't press me. He just stood there for a moment before opening the car door and sitting down beside me. "You don't have to talk," he said, his tone gentle. "I'll just sit with you." For a long time we sat in silence. Sam didn't ask any questions, didn't pry. He just sat there. In the midst of my turmoil, his silence was strangely comforting. Sam was a good guy, always had been, even in the cutthroat world of residency, where competition could turn friends into rivals. He had always been kind to me. We both knew that only one of us would stay on after residency, but Sam never treated me as anything less than a friend. Eventually, Sam glanced at his watch, then at me. "Do you want to go inside? Maybe grab some coffee?" I shook my head. "No, not yet." He nodded, but that odd smile was there again. "If you need anything, I'm here. Anytime. Okay? Thanks." I managed to croak out, my voice barely a whisper. Sam gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze before heading inside. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I knew I couldn't sit there forever. I had to do something, anything, to take back control of my life. That I couldn't just let her walk away without consequences. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything while I was left with nothing. I called a detective agency I found online. My hands were steady as I spoke to the receptionist, arranging a meeting. I was going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. A few days later, I met with the private detective I had hired. His office was dimly lit, the air heavy with the scent of old leather and paper. The detective, a grizzled man in his late 50s with a deep, gravelly voice, wasted no time getting to the point. He began, sliding a folder across the desk toward me. What I found? Well, it's not pretty. My heart raced as I opened the folder, my eyes scanning the pages. There were photos, dates, times, details of Emily's movements over the past month. Each security picture showed her with the man I had found in our bed. They were together in restaurants, walking hand in hand in the park, and entering various hotels. "She's been seeing this guy for about a month," the detective said, his voice flat. "But that's not all." I looked up from the folder, a sinking feeling in my gut. "What do you mean?" The detective hesitated, then reached into a drawer and pulled out another, thicker folder. "This goes back about 6 months. I've got video footage, records, everything you need." 6 months? My mind reeled. Emily had been cheating on me for half a year? The detective opened the folder and pulled out a series of screenshots, laying them out on the desk in front of me. "These are from various hotels around the city," he explained. "She's been with different men, and sometimes different women." I stared at the photos, feeling like I was going to be sick. There was Emily, smiling, laughing, completely at ease with these strangers. My stomach churned as the detective continued. She didn't stick with just one person. It was like she was living a double life. "But there's more." He pulled out another set of photos and placed them in front of me. "This one might interest you the most." I leaned in, my breath catching in my throat. The photos were grainy, taken from a hotel elevator's security camera. The first image showed Emily entering the elevator with another man. My blood ran cold as I realized who it was. It was Sam. I blinked, hoping I was seeing things. But there he was, plain as day, his arm casually draped around Emily's shoulders. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "How?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "How could this happen?" The detective didn't answer, just slid more photos across the desk. In each one, There was Sam, sometimes alone with Emily, other times with her and someone else. They were in hotel lobbies, elevators, even outside my own apartment building. My head spun as I tried to make sense of it. Sam was involved with your wife for quite a while, the detective said, his tone as calm as ever. I'm sorry, Alex, but it looks like he was one of her first, if not the very first. And her longest one, actually. In fact, he's with her the day before you found out about her cheating. My vision blurred as I stared at the photos, my heart pounding in my chest. The man who had comforted me in the parking lot, the colleague I had considered a friend, had been betraying me all along. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, and I had to grip the edge of the desk to steady myself. I'm sick, I muttered, more to myself than to the detective. How could this happen? How could he? How could she? The detective watched me carefully, but he remained silent. I pushed the photos away, unable to look at them any longer. My hands were trembling, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of them coherent. I need to think, I said, my voice hoarse. Take your time, the detective replied, his voice softer now. You've got the evidence you need, Alex. It's up to you how you want to use it. I nodded numbly, gathering the folders and stuffing them into my bag. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. As I turned to leave, the detective spoke again. Alex, he said, and I paused at the door. Don't let this break you. You've got the upper hand now. I didn't respond, just nodded again before stepping out. It was all too much to process. But one thing was clear. They had made a fool of me, and now it was time for them to face the consequences. As I drove away, a plan began to form in my mind. It wasn't just about getting what I deserved in the divorce. It was about making sure they paid for what they had done. All of them. I returned to the hospital, determined to set my plan in motion. I found Sam in the break room, sipping on coffee and going over some notes. When he saw me, he gave me that familiar, concerned look. But now, after everything I knew, that look only made my skin crawl. Alex, he said, standing up, how are you holding up? I forced a weary smile and sat down across from him. Not great, man. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've come to a decision. He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. What kind of decision? I need to leave this place, I said, letting out a sigh. This hospital, this city. It's all too much. Too many memories, you know? I think it's time for a fresh start somewhere new. Sam nodded slowly, trying to mask the interest in his eyes. I get that. Do you have any idea where you might go? Not yet. I lied. But I'll figure it out. I want to leave everything behind, even the money. I don't need it. I'm going to give it all to Emily. I want her to be happy, even if we can't be together. At that, Sam's eyes lit up, just as I expected. He tried to hide it, but I could see the excitement bubbling beneath the surface. He knew about the money, my dad's inheritance. It was a substantial sum. Wow, he said, trying to sound sincere. Alex, are you sure about this? Yeah, I said, keeping my voice steady. I just want to move on, you know? I've been through hell these past few days, and I just want to start fresh. Sam clapped a hand on my shoulder, giving me that same reassuring smile that now made my stomach turn. I understand. I'll miss you around here, but I respect your decision. Thanks, Sam. I wish you all the best here. You're going to do great things, I know it. With that, I left the hospital, my heart pounding in my chest. The first part of my plan was in motion, and now it was time for the second. I headed home, where Emily was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the television. Emily? I said softly, as I entered the room. She looked up, her eyes red and tired. Alex, I didn't expect you back so soon. I've been thinking, I began, echoing the same speech I had given to Sam. I can't do this anymore. I need to leave to start over somewhere new. And I'm going to give you everything. The house, the money. I just want you to be happy. She blinked, surprised by my words, but she didn't argue. You don't have to do that, she said quietly. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, I replied, keeping my tone even. But it's what I want. I've been holding on to too much pain. This is my way of letting go. Emily looked down, sadness and relief flickering across her face. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I said, turning toward the door. I'll be out of here soon. I just wanted you to know. I watched as Emily processed my words, her face a mixture of confusion and relief. I left her there, knowing that both she and Sam would be feeling a false sense of security. But I wasn't done yet. I called the detective the moment I left the house, instructing him to follow both of them closely, even got some hidden cameras in my house. I wanted every detail, every meeting, every whispered word captured. I knew they would let their guard down now that they thought I was stepping aside. Days passed, and the detective sent me updates regularly. As expected, Emily and Sam began meeting in secret, trying to figure out what my next move might be. Then, one night, I got the call I had been waiting for. The detective had followed them back to my house. They were doing it in my bed. I watched the footage, feeling a cold, detached satisfaction as the reality of their actions hit me. This was the final piece of evidence I needed. Days passed quickly. The atmosphere at the hospital was tense with the upcoming announcement about who would stay and who would leave. Everyone was on edge, and the halls buzzed with whispered speculation. On the day of the announcement, the hospital's conference room was packed. Doctors, nurses, and staff filled every seat, their conversations a low hum of nervous energy. Sam and Emily were in the crowd. I had managed to secure a position behind the scenes. I was calm, collected, and ready. With a few swift keystrokes, I swapped out the planned slides with a set of my own. The room fell silent as the projector whirred to life. The first few slides were standard, names, positions, and congratulatory messages. Then came the slide announcing the staff who would remain. The audience leaned forward, eager to see the results as the final slide appeared. Gasps filled the room. It was the video clip of Emily and Sam together on my bed, their arms around each other, looking relaxed and happy. Below the video were the words, "Congratulations to our new stars, Emily and Sam." The silence that followed was deafening. The room erupted into shocked whispers and murmurs. Emily's face turned crimson, her eyes wide with embarrassment. Sam's jaw dropped. "Alex!" Emily's voice trembled as she looked around, desperate for someone to explain. "What's going on?" I stepped forward, a cold smile on my lips. Just thought it was time for everyone to see the real story. Sam tried to intervene, his face flushed with anger. "You can't do this. It's exactly what you deserve." I interrupted, my voice steady. "You and Emily thought you could deceive everyone, live in a fantasy while destroying my life. Well, now everyone knows the truth." The reaction was immediate. The room buzzed with shock and outrage. The dean and the board of the hospital quickly convened, their decisions swift and unforgiving. Sam was denied the position he had been vying for, his career now marred by scandal. Emily was placed on indefinite leave. Back at home, I sent Emily divorce papers, claiming the house and most of the assets. The document was clear and unequivocal. Emily signed it without hesitation. There were no arguments, no attempts to negotiate. It was as though she had already accepted her fate. "Alex," she started, her voice hesitant. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I'm sorry for everything." I took a sip of my drink, watching her. "I just need to understand why. Why did you do it?" Emily's eyes flickered with a mix of guilt and sorrow. "It all began with Sam. He was always so envious of you, your success, your respect. He'd make these little comments, and I didn't realize how much they were affecting me." She paused, as if trying to gather her thoughts. "One night, after a particularly harsh argument between us, Sam made a move on me. At first, I resisted. I was loyal to you, but that night I was vulnerable. I gave in. I leaned in, trying to grasp the gravity of her confession. And then, Emily's face reddened. Once I was with him, it was like a switch flipped. Sam introduced me to a world I didn't even know existed. One where excitement and desire took over. It was thrilling, addicting." She took a deep breath. I started going out with him, seeing other people, sometimes men, sometimes women. The rush was intoxicating. It made our normal life feel so boring in comparison. So it was just about excitement. I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. You threw everything away for a thrill? Emily's eyes filled with tears. I didn't think it would go this far. I got caught up in the excitement and lost sight of what really mattered. I'm sorry. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. We had a life, a future, and it all came crashing down because you wanted something different. Emily nodded, her face pale. I know. I wish I could take it all back. I stood up, feeling a heavy weight in my chest. I appreciate you telling me the truth. I needed to hear it, even if it's painful. As I walked out of the bar, the night air felt colder than usual. Emily's words echoed in my mind, highlighting how one lapse in judgment can lead to a lifetime of regret.